look at the numbers, look at the data, look at the feedback, and then learn from that and do something different next time? What is my agenda here?
Why do you want to speak to me? Do you just want me to prescribe your drug?
Maybe a bit of a rogue question, maybe not. We'll see.
So often I think as pharma, we're very short term. We think about the now.
But it does feel like that maybe this could be something that pharma doesn't need to be behind about.
I think it's what the NHS would like, and I think commercially it could work. There is still this distrust with pharma.
A lot of people will maybe move roles as well themselves 18 months to 2 years, so that they're kind of thinking of, okay, what can I do in my time?
You know, I was just winging it. I'm going to be honest, probably was just winging it. Live in the knowledge that bad things happen, but don't let that knowledge affect how you live. And when you're trying to do something new that's sort of uncharted, you have to.
Welcome back to another episode of Final Form with me, Amish Patel. Thank you so much for tuning in. So today I'm delighted to be joined by Georgina Fihosy, a UK qualified pharmacist with over 20 years of experience across diverse sectors. Georgina is also the founder of AfroTouch Design, a brand that celebrates the beauty and diversity of Black culture through unique greeting cards. And as well as being a public and keynote speaker, Georgina also works as strategic account manager at Novartis, following many years of pharmacy-based roles in the NHS. So Georgina, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. How are you?
Hi Amish, I'm fine. Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Nah, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much. So I want to kick it off straight away, really, and start really with your role at Novartis as a strategic account manager. Job titles mean a lot of different things in a lot of different companies, and sometimes in the same company as well. So I'd love to hear a bit more from you in terms of, for you, what does that mean? What is the vision of that role, and what does that look like on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, I work as a strategic account manager. Um, Basically what that means is I wear two hats. So I wear a promotional hat and also wear a non-promotional hat. And my role really is about engaging with senior leaders within the NHS, um, and really trying to understand what are their biggest priorities, what are the things that they're trying to tackle on a day-to-day basis, and how can we as an organization align and support them with some of those challenges. So it could be therapy based, it could be around big topics like health inequalities, productivity, but it's really about understanding what their issues are and how then we can co-create solutions together. um, I think one of the things I always say is we for my role, it's really around moving away from that sort of tactical historical relationship that we've always had with the NHS to one where we actually sit around the table and have conversations about how can we benefit and how can we kind of ensure that there's outcomes for patients, there's outcomes for the NHS as a whole, but there's also benefits for the organisation within pharma. So it's really around that kind of triple win, which we always talk about. But actually, what does that tangibly look like when we sit around a table and have those conversations? So a lot of my work, my day to day, is having conversations with people within the NHS that sit within integrated care systems, and really just having honest and open conversations about how we can work together and partner.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you mentioned a lot there in terms of sitting around the table and partnerships with the NHS. And I guess your background is having worked in the NHS. So I'm sure that puts you in kind of good stead for doing what you're doing. But are there any particular skills that I guess you had in your career within the NHS that you're kind of drawing on specifically now in some of the work you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all have our kind of unique selling points to ourselves, and being a pharmacist has actually been really helpful, especially having worked in the NHS for the period of time that I have, and having worked across different sectors. So within secondary care, also a little bit in community, but also within primary care and as a commissioning role. I think all of those skills have helped in this current role as strategic account manager. So just the simple things from being a pharmacist in terms of that clinical knowledge and expertise is fantastic because I have a handle on the therapy areas that we're trying to kind of promote, but also the fact that that kind of patient-centered care I've experienced, caring for patients. So I understand the needs of patients from that perspective. And I guess just your kind of bog standard skills around, like, communication, analytics. As a pharmacist, we're really heavy on those sorts of things. We have to be able to understand complex, situations, complex medical information. So being able to kind of take those skills and bring them across. And there's other things like stakeholder management, relationship management, all of those sorts of things on a day to day. I've been able to sort of utilize and still utilize in my role as a strategic account manager.
Yeah, okay, I love that. And that's got me thinking a little bit. So I imagine you're not the only person in this role in Novartis, right? There are others who do the same role, different settings, etc. So do they all have the same, I guess, background as you, or do they people come with different skills, different backgrounds, and you kind of can work on that?
Very different backgrounds. So we work across the country. So there's a number of us in similar roles that work in different areas. Um, some of us are pharmacists, but many of us have. I mean, for me, I I hadn't worked in pharma before working in Novartis, so I came from the NHS straight into the organisation. A lot of other people have had experience within market access and have had market access roles in the past, or have had sales roles and moved into market access roles. So the backgrounds are very different. But I think the unique skill sets around sort of that bit, that having that kind of commercial acumen, having that relationship management criteria, having that strategic account expertise, and also around sort of being able to understand the healthcare system and how it works and how we can tap into that, I think are things that people that have this role, that's the skills that they have.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. So just to, I guess, add on some of the other layers that I mentioned earlier on at the start of this. So that is one aspect of what you do. You also have a small business, as we talked about as well, and also have a family. I mean, we just talked offline earlier about your holiday, for example, and kind of fitting that in around stuff. So I guess the ability to keep all of those go, you can't just be like blocking out days here and there potentially for everything. Everything kind of is ongoing every day. So you're constantly switching headspaces, I imagine. Is there any kind of things you can maybe draw on in terms of each of those roles, I guess, you play in your life, that can help you in others? Or how do you constantly switch between different tasks and different kind of goals?
It is difficult, but I think I have quite a high level of sort of discipline. I think it's just an internal thing with me. So I'm very much a time management prioritization type of girly, and I make sure that everything kind of has its time. Um, so when it comes to the family, we run on schedules and timings and things like that. Everybody kind of knows what they need to do, and it's similar with work and with my business. Everything has its time. I'm fortunate enough to be able to work remotely, and so that's helpful. So I'm able to sort of do the school run in the morning. I don't have to think about having a commute into an office. I can take the kids to school. I can start work. I can finish work and then start back with the family, and then I've got some time in the evenings to run the business. So it's very much around just that kind of time management piece. Um, and just being a mum, as just being adaptable and being able to, I wouldn't say multitask, but just being able to think about things in a different way. I think just naturally as a mother, we kind of just have we're forced to have those skills innately. Yeah, so I take all those things, that the problem solving, the critical thinking, into every aspect of all the things that I do.
Yeah, nice. And I guess you sound similar to me. I think the way you just described that kind of time and scheduling. So I was wondering actually on that point, practically, is there specific tools you use that kind of work across everything and to help you, I guess, manage that time and scheduling?
I'm a big fan of the have you heard of the Pomodoro method? Where
I
you
have vaguely, yeah, if you, yeah, go on.
where
Yeah.
you kind of put timings to everything. So I've invested in
Yeah.
this, got this little timer. It's got different times on it, so you
Ah,
can
nice.
literally set. So for you to have sort of um, specific time where you can focus. So sometimes we can't focus for a whole hour, but we might be able to fit something into sort of a 25-minute slot. And so I plan my day so that I know, okay, if I've got a certain piece of work that I need to work on, if I need to get something done, I'll set the timer, put it on for 30 minutes, and just knock it out in that time. So it's just a way of it's a sort of time management tool that I use, and I also can't sort of um, really try and list out and prioritize the things that I need to do. So I'm a big planner. I've got planners and scheduling things that I use. So I write down all the tasks for the day and I just put them into buckets. So which are the things that I need to do most urgently? Do those first always, and then everything else then follows through. So I'm quite disciplined in that way. Just to yeah, that's just to get things done.
Yeah. Have you always been like that, or is that something that's just kind of developed over time?
I mean, I think doing a pharmacy degree, I probably wasn't until I went to uni. I was very kind of carefree, and then I went into to have to do a pharmacy degree, which was really intense. And so, being a student, moving away from away from home, being on my own, and being a student, and having to do a quite intense degree, I had to sort of put things in place so that I was able to study, but also have fun and do all those bits, but in a way that actually meant that I was able to get a degree at the end of it. So I have kind of learned it over time, and also, then having a family and building a business. Once you have all of these elements starting to come in, if you don't have any structure at all, then it's really difficult to live life on a day to day because everything's always so chaotic. So having those in place really does help.
Yeah, I can also align to that a little bit as well. And I think I've kind of tried and tested things over time in ways of, I guess, planning and scheduling. And I think some people I speak to find it almost a little bit weird where I say I plan in my free time as well. So I block out time where I can just do whatever. I've got nothing specific to do in that time, and people find that weird. It's like, is that too much or whatever? But it works for me, and I guess you got to find, yeah, what works for you, doesn't it? So,
Yeah,
yeah.
100%. I think for it's like you said, it's what works for you, and what works for me is sort of scheduling in time, and even for self care, even for doing things with the family. We've got a joint diary which my husband and I use for the household, so we just kind of know what's going on. But yeah, it's really important that you find something that works for you.
Cool. So let's go back to your role at Novartis specifically. So a lot of my audience that are watching will be potentially working inside a pharma organization, maybe in a similar role, or maybe working with someone working with a strategic account manager from a different role, for example. Um, I'd love to hear about maybe a specific challenge that you've recently faced within the last 12 months or so, or are currently facing, I guess, and how you've gone about approaching that in terms of overcoming that.
Yeah, so I guess, like I said before, a lot of the work that we do is around thinking about projects that we can work with the NHS to support some of their challenges, and sometimes it can be really new ways of working. And when you're trying to do something new that's sort of uncharted, you have to talk to lots of different people just to make sure that it's the right thing and that we're being compliant and that sort of thing. Um, and because the NHS is changing so regularly, it's important that I talk to medical affairs, I talk to the legal team, and talk to the brand teams, just to make sure that what we're trying to do is works. So I mentioned that one of the priorities for the NHS is around health inequalities, and health inequalities is not just a buzzword, but it's a big thing within the NHS, and lots of pharma companies are trying to sort of tap into how do organizations support and help address those types of things. Um, and often you have to look at it above brand, so not just above the products that you're selling or promoting, but how do you look at wider above brand topics? So health inequalities is one. So for me, the challenge is just around making those sorts of topics live and breathe through the organization, and thinking about how do we tell that story, how do we support the NHS with things like health inequalities, in a way that kind of, like I said, moves away from that tactical transactional piece. um, so yeah, for me it's just around telling that storytelling and bringing the business along the journey, in the sense that when you're looking at health inequalities, you're looking at working with communities. You're working in different ways. Where we would typically work with healthcare organisations like NHS trusts, we're looking at, okay, how do we tap into community or voluntary sector organisations? How do we support that access for those people at the highest risk of ill health in a different way that we would normally work. So having those conversations internally and externally can often be challenging, but it's important for me to sort of bring in, people like the legal team, compliance, to say, actually, can we work in this way? And if we can, what's the best function, or what's the best way of doing that? I hope that's kind of answered the question.
It has, yeah, definitely. And I think it kind of leads me on to my next question because I think you mentioned some of the different stakeholders that you work with, kind of their legal, medical affairs, brand teams, etc. And I guess often each of those functions will have their own potential priorities, their own goals, the way they're measured on what they do. I've been in one of those teams myself, so I fully know that. And I think often still in pharma organizations, and maybe beyond pharma, to be fair, across industries, people are still working in silos, I guess, because they're working towards their own goals and what they're measured on. So I guess it sounds like you've got in a good place, so maybe you have got some good partnerships there with all of the teams that you're working with. I guess, is there anything specifically you've seen that has led to create those good, healthy partnerships where everybody is striving towards that one goal? And like you said, you need to take the business along with you in that specific priority and things like that. So anything you've seen that's worked well, practical, that maybe people could take from there?
Yeah. So cross-functional working is really
Mm,
important to us as an organisation. So whenever we're thinking about things, we're thinking about projects, we don't just think about them in silo. We don't just think about them in our kind of commercial teams. We think about the impact and what expertise we can bring in from the other functions. So we do have cross-functional teams. So I work across South London, and so we have teams of key account managers, of brand managers that all cover that same area. So then when we're thinking about looking at potential projects, we do bring in the other functions to say, okay, what does this look like for you? How can you tap into this? Or what would be a beneficial outcome for you if we were to engage in this partnership? And we do that across the board, um, just so that we're bringing everybody along the journey. I think it's really important because we talk a lot about sort of return on investment, and that return on investment is not necessarily always financial. It could be around, reputational, um, supporting with the reputation of the company, supporting with other things other than just kind of the monetary thing. We are a commercial organization, we know that, but in order to work in partnership with the NHS or work in partnership with our stakeholders, there has to be that element of trust. And so it's also articulating that to functions outside of market access and where my function sits around. It's not just about the bottom line. There are other things that we need to think about, but we need to collectively think about that so that we're all on the page. So that, if I then need to come back to the brand team and ask for a little bit of extra money, you understand why I'm asking for that, and you understand what the end game is and what the outcome will be.
yeah, and I think that's good. I like that, and I think sometimes I felt it myself as well. Like actually, yeah, that return on investment that you mentioned there, it is sometimes seen as okay, literally give me a monetary figure, give me a calculation, and some of those other things are hard to calculate. So is it? I wonder if have you come up with challenges like that where people maybe are very hard coded into okay, doing this needs to result in this many pounds, euros, whatever, but you've had to kind of persuade them through other metrics or ways of measuring other things.
Yeah, definitely. And I think often when you're working on projects, it can be really difficult to put in those metrics that are um, kind of show what the return on investment would be from a monetary perspective. Often these projects are, because you're kind of living and breathing them as you go through. You're learning as you go through. And, how can you measure increase in engagement? How can you measure so there's certain things that are really difficult to measure, um, but I think it's about the kind of compelling narratives and the storytelling and the um, yeah, I guess it's the how you present how you present a project and how you present the benefits of that project to everybody in a way that truly shows, well, this is what the impact for the patient is going to be. This is what the impact for the NHS as a whole is going to be. And this is what the impact for us is going to be. And it might not necessarily be immediate. It might not be, but actually the long-term benefits of are what's going to be important. Because often I think as pharma, we're very short-term. We think about the now, and we don't think about actually what's going to be the benefit in 2-3 years, or even 18 months to 2 years. What's that impact, not just the now, because things have changed so much. So I think there's an element of kind of thinking more long term, especially when it comes to impact, because often we know that if you're trying to change, even within healthcare, you can't change someone's cardiovascular risk, in a day. And even, it takes time to do that. Even within the interventions that we have, it takes time. And so we also have to be, that those are the stories that I need to tell internally about, the patients, and these things will turn around and things will happen. But we just have to make sure that we're putting the right things in place in order to see that in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a key point you mentioned there about that kind of short-term thinking and long-term thinking. I think I always struggled with that myself when I was in-house working in roles as well, because it was always very much short term, because I think a lot of people will maybe move roles as well themselves 18 months to 2 years. So they're kind of thinking of, okay, what can I do in my time and kind of show what's been achieved. But really, yeah, maybe it's about, yeah, like you said, having that long term vision for where we want to get to, but potentially to sell it within the business, you maybe need some just like stage gate, almost milestones to be like, okay, we're planning on hitting this by this point, this by this point, but ultimately this is what's going to lead us there. So that it
I
removes that
think,
short term.
yeah, I think the NHS, or the healthcare organisation or healthcare systems that we work in, are looking more towards that,
Mm.
because I think they're so used to, organizations coming in, doing these little projects at 6 months or 12 months, and then there's no kind of long-term sustainability. So you might go in and put in a solution, but actually it's not enough time for then the organization, the NHS, to find the funding to make that project sustainable. So actually what they're wanting to do with us is actually have a long-term strategic partnership where we work together for a longer period of time, and we put in success measures in along that journey. And it just adds to the fruitfulness of the relationship. It adds to the trust, I think it helps on both sides. If we're not just going in and saying, okay, we're going to put this thing in here or this thing in here, actually, this is your plan for the next 5 years. This is your whatever your therapy area. This is your plan for the next 5 years. How do we work together to ensure that you get to that endpoint over a long period of time? And it just keeps the momentum going. So, yeah, I think there's definitely an appetite from the customers and the people, stakeholders that I talk to, around working more strategically, but on a longer, more structured fashion.
Yeah, that's made me think about a conversation I was having recently. Well, I've been having a lot recently over time about like pilots generally, about any, and that could be a pilot for anything, right? But like I think a lot of pilots are great there, but they're designed without thinking about that long term. And so even if they are successful in that 6 months, actually, as you mentioned, it's not then sustainable to scale. So actually doing it even for 6 months was kind of a waste of time and money, and resource for people as well. So actually even designing those pilots with long-term thinking, even if you're going to test out in a small environment from the start, I think is key. Otherwise, yeah, it's just a waste of time. Yeah.
I mean, I think pilots are important, but I think I had a recent conversation. We were talking about, the NHS term of pilot. I think it's pilotitis or something. They're just over pilots, and it's around moving from pilots to actually programs of work. So let's not just put in pilots. Let's have programs of work that are over the long term. And yes, we might need to do short term short term projects, but let that be a part of the wider program that we're looking at, because you do have to test things out and do those sorts of things, but let's do it in a kind of agile fashion. Let's put these things in, let's learn quickly, let's move on, but let it be part of a wider program of work that both organizations have jointly agreed to.
Yeah, love that. So I guess on this theme as well, so I guess for pharma to continue delivering, it does require that alignment really of the business needs, healthcare professional needs, patient needs, and within the business, that's the internal people as well in the different functions. So I think, is there anything specifically you see that's not happening today that could enhance the quality really of what pharma creates, whether that's content tools, services, and really creates more of those all-round wins? Is there anything you'd love to see more of?
I think I always feel that pharma has so much to offer, even just outside of therapeutics. So in terms of like a of just being a pharma organization where you've got P&O, so you've got people and organizations, you've got leadership, all of those skills that we have as a pharma organization could be packaged up and delivered to the NHS, who often struggle with, you know, leadership or understanding things around access to medicines and all those sorts of things. So I would like to see that partnership around, the capabilities and the skills that we have as a pharma organization, as a business. How do we then share those skills and let that be of value to the NHS as well? Because again, that adds to the trust piece. Um, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it does. And I was thinking around, I guess that trust piece is massively important as well. And do you think widely there is that, I guess, openness for the NHS to partner with one pharma company, let's say directly, or would they even need to be a third party, which is a bit more neutral, do you think? Is there that trust already to let a pharma company in, knowing that they may have an agenda, let's say?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because again, I was having a conversation just this week about that, and the stakeholder was talking about the fact that there is still this distrust with pharma, and if there is a third party organization that we could go through, that would probably be the best route. So they talk a lot about, academic health science centers or health innovation networks as the kind of vehicle between pharma and the NHS, because that's where, the innovation happens or the research and development happens, those conversations happen. um, but I do feel that that we have come a long way from in terms of that trust element, especially with the ABPI and all the things, the stuff that's come into play. Um, but I think there is still a lot of apprehension about solely working with individual pharma companies. I think a lot of NHS organisations like to work with a varying number of pharma companies, so it looks so that there's the transparency's sake. So I don't think that's a good thing, because I think every company has something different to offer. But yeah, I think there is probably a need to look at how do we tap into these kind of third party organizations, but also how do we continue to build the trust directly with these NHS organizations? How do we change that narrative? Um, because I think historically, and even when I worked in the NHS, you were always kind of second guessing. Oh well, Why do you want to speak to me? Do you just want me to prescribe your drug, or do you just want to do this? And when I'm now on the other side, and I'm coming and thinking, well, actually, we can really help you. We've got skills and capabilities that will really support the delivery of services and support access for patients and support outcomes. And it's just thinking about things differently and being able to have the space to think about those things differently, because I often feel that once you're in front of somebody, you can, and you have an open and honest conversation, there is a level you can start to make things happen, and then that trust develops. I think the biggest thing for us as working in pharma is that initial, trying to get that initial conversation and trying to get that initial engagement, because that trust element is still an issue. It's still there. But like I said, I think we've come a long way, and I think with roles like mine, um, that helps. That helps to those sort of non-promotional roles are really helpful in trying to bridge that gap.
Yeah, I think I was just thinking back to the earlier point we were talking about actually as well around that almost that internal cross-functional working and making sure that everybody's kind of singing from the same vision as well and working towards the same goal because actually for that trust. Say you get that original kind of openness to have that initial conversation. If that internal kind of alignment isn't there, it only takes kind of one, I guess, person going outside of that in one conversation to suddenly like lose that trust because their agenda is something different for the business as well. So yeah, that kind of foundations internally is very important as well.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why that whole co-creation piece is really important, because right from the get-go, you need to make sure that you are all on the right page, that you all of you together know what your North Star is, you know what it is that you're trying to achieve. Um, and hence why those early cross-functional conversations internally are really important, because you don't want to then go and have a conversation with a stakeholder and you're really excited and you're like, yeah, we could do this and da 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 da, and then you come back to your organization and one person hasn't sat around the table and they'll then say, well, actually no, this doesn't fit with me, or this is fit with what we're trying to do. If you bring everybody together, then you kind of it's a good footing for kind of future conversations.
Yeah. So on this theme as well, maybe a bit of a rogue question, maybe not. We'll see. Do you see a world? But I haven't seen it myself already, so I'm going to frame it in this way. Do you see a world where, say, you've got multiple pharma companies working in the same therapeutic area, which ultimately means they've got the same goal? Do you see them partnering together versus the silos of, hey, this is my product, we're going to keep it our secrets, we're going to keep our secrets? Do you see that world, and could that help build more trust as well?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I do in a way. I do. Um, I think there's opportunities for sort of shared learning, especially if you're playing within the same sort of therapy area. I think there are opportunities for pharma companies to work together. How that will happen, I'm not sure, but I'm always an optimist, and I always believe in the art of kind of possibility, and so I think it's what the NHS would like. Um, and I think commercially it could work for all, as long as the right conversations are had at the beginning. I think commercially it could work. I think it just needs open and honest conversations around the table. So yeah, I'm going to say yes. I'm open to
Yeah, nice. Okay, watch this space. Nice. So, I want to change it up slightly. So, as we established earlier on, you've got multiple things going on. That your role at Novartis is one thing. You've got a small business, Afro Touch Design, and also family life. So, I guess what drives you to continue working in pharma? You could very easily not be doing it. You could be focusing 100% on your business and family, etc. So, why do you keep that kind of feet or 2 feet almost in the door there?
I love what I do, and I know that sounds really cheesy, but I do. I've always been a person that is sort of purpose driven, and the work that I've been able to do in my role as a strategic account manager has been purpose driven, and the projects that we've put in place, the things that we've done for marginalized communities, and just supporting with access to therapies that they might not have been able to have access to, just doing that is what keeps me in the role. Um, and the same with my business. Again, it's purpose driven. It's about, creating an opportunity whereby people can have access to culturally reflective cars on the high street. Again, it's a purpose driven thing. Um, so as long as I'm doing something that I see that is purpose driven, that has kind of a wider impact outside of myself, I'm always going to be, all in it, um, until I feel differently.
Mm. Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But no, I like that. There's great alignment there between both of those things as well. And as you said, nothing is ever cemented, right? You go through seasons of what your purpose is, right? And you just got to follow it and do whatever the opportunities are that are drawn to you. So yeah, I like that. I guess linked to that, sort of. So there's lots of things always. There's lots of new things, let's say, that are impacting us daily, whether that's professionally or personally. Is there anything specifically that excites you about the farm industry, maybe something that can impact it and really propel it forwards, or something that you know is coming to future further down the line already as well?
I'm really loving AI. I know
Mm,
people are a bit kind of skeptical, but I just feel like the possibilities are endless with AI. Um, just being able to, even like within meetings, just being able to have an opportunity to summarize a meeting after you've had it. Um, being able to search for things and put things in a more sort of condensed fashion. I think that's great. Also, from a health tech perspective, the power that the AI is going to be able to offer um, is amazing. When we think about precision medicine, when we think about, you know, genomics, all those sorts of things where health tech is going to be huge. I think there's a massive opportunity for pharma to kind of tap into that. So I'm really excited to see how pharma kind of utilizes, not just for its kind of business functions internally, but for its ability to produce medicines, manufacture medicines for the future. I think that's a really exciting space. Yeah, so I mean, I look forward to seeing like over the next say 10 years,
yeah.
what
Go out 10 years. Yeah.
what that will be.
Yeah.
It's even within this short space of time.
Mm,
Even with me sort of been working in pharma for the last 8 years, how much it's changed, how much more it has to change with all the technology and that are coming. It's just really exciting. It's really exciting. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how AI um, will work and I think as pharma organizations we can jump on it quite quickly, and so if we can jump on it quite quickly, then we have then a lot to be able to then share with the people that we want to work with um, going forward. So yeah, I'm excited to watch this space.
nice. So you mentioned, yeah, like with the AI, a couple of use cases there around kind of meeting notes, etc. as well. Is that something that you specifically you're doing? Is that widely done at Novartis? Yeah, is there kind of like, you don't obviously don't have to go into details, but is there like company use of AI? Is that kind of widely done, or are people just kind of testing and trying things at the moment?
Yeah, no, we're just sort of testing it out and seeing how to best utilize it. I think it's important that you have to put in the right processes and things in place, because you just we've got lots of information that we wouldn't want to go elsewhere. So I think it's something that we're exploring and looking at. Um, but yeah, I think it's the future. I was having a conversation with my husband not too long ago, and he was basically we were talking about um, in I think it's what 6 or 7 years time, the generation now will be going into the workforce. So I think Gen Z, whatever it is now, they'll be heading into the workforce, and there's going to be an expectation that AI is in place and all these things are in place, because that's the world that they're going to be living in. And so organizations like pharma companies, or where he works in the legal um, industry, there's going to be an expectation that these people that are coming into these organizations are going to want to be able to utilize AI and all these things. And so we need to be getting ourselves ready now, so that we're able to retain people and keep these young people that are coming in, keep them in our organization. So I think, yeah, if we're not embracing AI as organizations, then we should look to, but we just need to be doing it in the best kind of compliant and best way possible, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a really important point actually about, yeah, that generation coming into the workforce. I didn't really think about that specifically myself and their expectations, but like, because traditionally, I guess pharma as an industry is kind of behind, let's say, other industries in or utilization of technology. But it does feel like that maybe this could be something that pharma doesn't need to be behind about because everybody is learning at the same time. And I know a lot of companies already that I've kind of engaged with or work with have got some of those procedures and rules and things in place and have compliant tools already kind of within the system with single sign-on, etc., all of that good stuff. Um, so maybe this could help like almost bring pharma up to a level playing field to other industries as well, as long as people don't sleep on it.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing. I think it's let's not. We're in the it's the perfect time now to be understanding and really learning what the capabilities are and what we really need, and then just testing things out and seeing, because the world, even 3 to 5 years is going to be very different to what it is now. And technology. I grew up. I'm going to show my age, but I grew up where we didn't have the internet wasn't even a thing. Uh, and now my daughter can't even imagine a life that where there was no internet, or no AI or anything like that. It's a whole different world. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
excited.
That's when when you said 10 years ago, 10 years in the future, just a minute ago, I was like, whoa, I can't even imagine 10 years. That's who knows what's going to happen. I don't think we can imagine it. Yeah, some of these movies might come to life that we've seen before. Um,
Yeah, you never
yeah.
know.
So I guess with that rapid change that's going on and will continue to go on, I guess how do you stay up to date with all of this? And in terms of needing to know what you need to know for your role, but also trying to stay ahead and make sure you develop as the times go as well.
Yeah. I think for me, it's always just talking to people. You can never know everything, but you can always tap into different things. So I try to make sure I'm constantly talking to people who are in the know with these sorts of things, not just within my role at Novartis, but also my company business role as well. Um, it's just, yeah, making sure that I listen to lots of podcasts, I read lots of books and that kind of thing. So just keeping up to speed, and where I don't understand anything, I just talk to somebody about it. Tell me about this, what's happening, that sort of thing. I think communication is key.
Okay, so outside of, let's say, outside of podcasts, audiobooks, all of that, say someone was starting in either a strategic account manager role or just generally joining the pharma industry for the first time in whatever capacity. Is there any specific advice you'd give them for, let's say, the first week, couple of weeks, etc., in role to help them really succeed going forwards?
So if I go back to what I did, because for me, I went from a NHS role into a industry that I knew very little about. I knew, but never worked in. So the first the first couple of months actually is just about embedding yourself, just learning, talking to lots of different stakeholders just to understand, what the role is. So I often would buddy up with different people. So like I said, we have a number of the same roles. So just buddying up with someone that's a similar role and just having one-to-ones with them on a regular basis, talking to them about, what is it they're doing, what is it that you're doing, and just exchanging ideas. I think having a buddy is really, really important in the industry, um, especially when you work. For me, I'm a field-based role, so you do tend to spend a lot of your time working on your own in your little patch. So it's really important to reach out, to kind of come out of your comfort zone and reach out and ask for help when you need it, and also not just within your function, but also ask cross-functionally as well. So, I might talk to one of the medical advisors, just, oh, tell me a bit about what you're doing, what you're working on, what you're struggling with, because there might be something that you can offer as well. So yeah, I would just say be open to having lots and lots of conversations. When you first start, make a conscious effort to put time in people's diaries and have quick sort of one-to-ones with people, um, and that will just help with your confidence and also help with your knowledge of the business as a whole as well. um, but always know that you're never just going to get it straight away. I had no clue what I was doing probably for the first 18 months of the role. I was just winging it. I'm going to be honest, probably was just winging it, because but at the same time I was having lots of conversations, and building up, and then building up my confidence as I went through. And even now, there's certain things that I stumble across and I get stuck on, but just being able to have the confidence to kind of ask for help. There's no shame in asking for help. Even in the big kind of corporate worlds, I think it's better to ask for help than to sit in silence and feel like you don't know what you're doing. Nobody knows what they're doing. We're all winging it. So
Yeah. Oh, I was gonna say the same thing.
we're
Literally, I
all
was
winging
yeah.
it. So, we might as well just, be open and have conversations, and let's wing it together.
Yeah, literally, I was gonna say the same thing. I literally have imposter syndrome pretty much most days. I sometimes go on calls. I'm like, why am I here? Like, like,
It
yeah,
happens it happens to all of us. That's I think that's it's part of kind of life's journey, and we just, as long as we recognize that, but we also don't sit in it, that we try and do something about it, and that we try and always take ourselves to that level of discomfort that's going to then move us to the next bit.
yeah, definitely. I want to touch on the point you mentioned there as well around. So you mentioned the buddy of someone who's in the same role, for example, but also then speaking to other people, and I think that's really important. The speaking to other people as well, because I was speaking to someone recently about like when I first joined the industry, and I kind of I guess I didn't have that advice, let's say, and so I kind of just immersed myself in the team I was in, basically with people doing the same role, and so I just basically picked up the same thing that everybody else was doing and did that. No one said that maybe that's the best way to do it or the correct way to do it, but only after kind of getting experience and then speaking to others, it's kind of you figure out actually you don't have to do things the way they're done. There may be better ways to do things. You grow your own confidence to then be able to do something different and then shape what you're doing and evolve the role as well. So I think if you kind of contain yourself in that one bubble of that one team, yeah, you just kind of repeat the pattern and not kind of evolve with the role as well. So I think that's really important.
And it also helps with your kind of own personal development, because there may be areas, within the organization that you might want to work in the future. So, you might be in a commercial role, but actually, or a sales role, and you might be thinking, actually, I might want to work in market access, but I'm not really sure. So just being able to have access to people and be able to have those conversations, you'll then be able to see whether it's a role for you or not, and you'll build. And as the more you talk to people, and the more you're building relationships, the more you're putting it out there that there may be something else that you might be able to do, and it's just helpful for your own kind of personal and professional development, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I'm aligned to that. Um, so now a separate question, maybe a bit of a bold question for maybe the people that will be watching this specifically, and sorry, any employers. But what advice would you give to, I guess, someone who is working a full-time role, let's say, in a corporate job, but maybe they have ambitions to start their own business or do something on the side, because you've done that yourself. So I guess is there any advice that maybe you heard that helped you, or maybe you've just developed yourself that you want to share with others?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's about understanding why. Like, why do you want to start something different? What is it? Is there something in your job that is kind of causing you to want to do something different? If Is it like me, where you're purpose driven, and there's another element that you want to kind of tap into? For me, it was very much, I've got a science brain, but I've also got a creative brain. So how do I wanted to be able to tap into my creativity, and what could I do if I couldn't solely get that out of my job? What else could I do? So I think it's just about understanding what the reasons are for you wanting to do that. And like I said, I think anything is possible, and there's always enough time. There's always enough time. I think like I said, um, I'm very much a time person, and I audit my time, so I'll be able to see, if I've spent 30 minutes scrolling on Instagram, I could, doing something else. So number one would be understand the why, and then the number two would be just go for it, because you can do both. I've been doing both for the last 8 years, and it's not easy, but when you understand the why behind it, when it's especially if it's purpose driven, and it's not about, oh, I just want to make some extra cash. When it's actually, there's a need, I want to serve, there's a service that I want to provide, and there's an actual need, then you can then make it happen. Just go on and do it. Um, think about the impact that it's going to have on the organization, because if you're working in an organization whereby the thing that you're going to do is probably very similar to what your organization is doing, you want to be careful that there's no conflict of interest. But then again, be open and honest if you can. Speak to your manager and things about what it is that you want to do. I was very open and honest about what it was that I wanted to do. There was no conflicts of interest, and for me, I was able to take the commercial skills from my business and bring them into the organization. So I think I always feel that organizations should be able to enable their employees to be their full and favorite selves and their authentic selves. And if that means that part of that is around looking at, a side hustle, whatever, it's about, okay, how will that side hustle support us as well? And if you've got a person who is doing all the things that are making them feel their best life, then they're going to give their all to you as an organization, because you're supporting them. So for me, my organization has really supported me, and so therefore I am 100% in supporting my organization to meet its objectives and meet its skills, because I'm also able to do that with my business. So I always think, that you can 100% do it, and organizations should be more open to it and enable their staff to be able to do it.
Yeah, I love that. You said so many good things there, and I can only echo them because I guess I had the same experience as well. So when I was in house in one of my roles, I was doing some stuff on the side which I was fully open with. I checked my contract first, and then I was fully open with it. And to your, I was basically I was in a marketing role in pharma, and then on the side I was helping people outside of pharma, start up small businesses, activate social media campaigns because I love social media. I love creating content. And then doing that enabled me to bring some of that learning back in-house around social media, looking at the data, how to activate it. So we didn't even need to hire agencies, for example, to do that on our behalf. I've just learned those skills by doing it elsewhere, for example. And so that I can echo that in terms of that can definitely happen. It's not just a one-off thing. Um, and the second thing you mentioned as well around purpose driven, I think that was really important as well, knowing your why of maybe why you want to do the side business, but also actually the why of even your role in corporate life, which has come across a lot for me today as well, in terms of actually being purpose driven, like really being clear on why you're doing that role or having a business or whatever, will pretty much energize you to do it essentially and make time for it. If it is just for the money, then actually everything you do is just going to be a chore and you're not really going to enjoy it and you're going to get tired. Because you're just going to get your paycheck at the end of the day. It's not going to be that fulfilling at all. So I think knowing your why across whether it's employed or business, I think is so important.
Yeah, 100%.
Nice. So very much linked to that. I tested this out actually only recently. I don't normally ask this, but I tested this out recently when I was doing a recording. Do you have any specific mantra or like quote saying that you maybe draw yourself to every day that helps you kind of win, or maybe when things are not going your way, you kind of come back to it and gets you back on your path again?
Yeah. So my mantra has always been, live in the knowledge that bad things happen, but don't let that knowledge affect how you live. So it's really
Okay.
around, like life, things are going to happen. You can't control everything, but if you know that, you're not going to then let that affect how you then live your day to day, because you know. So yeah, I've always kind of lived by that mantra. Um, yeah, and it's just, that's what keeps me going.
Yeah, I love that. Nice. Okay, then just to close, this is going to be again, this is dangerous for me, this one. So I've asked you a lot of questions. So is there anything you want to ask me, essentially?
Oh,
Doesn't,
you put me on the spot.
you don't have to, it's fine.
Why do you think, um, being a why is it important for you to, um, have this podcast? Um, and what are you using it? Why do you use it as a vehicle? What are you using it to do? What's your sort of end goal?
Yeah,
That's a
okay.
really loaded question. I'm sorry.
What is my agenda here?
I guess,
Yeah,
like, what's your kind of drive?
yeah. There's a few things. So I think the first thing is being in-house in various pharma roles, and then having since gone kind of on the other side as a consultant. Um, both times I've experienced and also had conversations with other people about like it's very hard to kind of within company and also in the industry, company to company, to share what people are doing, help each other, learn from specific things that people are working on, challenges or best practice. Often you go to conferences, like not like healthcare professional conferences, but like industry pharma conferences where there'd be people on stage presenting and they might talk a lot of theory around similar topics, but you don't really get deep into specifics, day-to-day practical things. Um, so that's what I wanted to do with this, is almost bring people on that I don't normally see on stages at those conferences that I go to, and find out more about what they're doing day to day, and how that potentially, the different ways that they're doing things, how that can then help other people. And again, so that's industry to industry, but also if there's people from the same company listening, they may not have had these conversations with you as well, potentially. So I'm hoping that people are learning off that way. So that's the first thing. Second thing, I kind of very lightly touched on it just a second ago, is I love creating content. I'm not the best at it. I just love being creative at it and learning as I go. And so just even if I can like do something and put it out there and then look at the numbers, look at the data, look at the feedback, and then learn from that and do something different next time. This kind of is an outlet for me to do that in a way that hopefully adds value to other people as well. Um, so that's pretty much my two main goals. Yes, in terms of like generally thinking, I am an independent consultant as well. Yes, it does help put me out there online into the world and just raise awareness of who I am, what are the topics I care about, because I do shape my questions based on potentially the areas that I work in and that type of thing as well. But I like to give people their platform as well to kind of share what they want to share as well. So I guess three things there. So providing that kind of value and best practice sharing for people, letting my creative juices flow, but then also just awareness of kind of the areas that I care about, and I guess elevating my online presence, but those of my guests as well. So I don't like doing solo episodes. So yeah,
I love that. Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
yeah, cool, no worries. So just to close it out, I guess, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you, to find out more about yourself and all the different things you do, whether that's Afro Touch Design or you as a strategic account manager as well at Novartis?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is probably the best place to get every aspect of me. So
Hmm.
yeah, just put in my name, Georgina Fihosy, and yeah, if there's any questions, you can always just send me a quick message. I'm very open, very honest, so always willing to help. So yeah.
So, Georgina, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me today, taking the time. I know you're a very busy person, so I hope you've enjoyed the conversation and found some value from it as well.
No, thank you. This was so cool. So thank you so much for inviting me on.
I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in. If you resonated with anything that was said or have any questions for either myself or Georgina, please get in touch. All of the details are in the show notes below. To get alerted when the next episode is out, make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or the follow button on Spotify. And that's it. See you next time.